Privet Katila Wanding Ruski desu. So, as of the making of this video, it's looking like Donald Trump lost the election, or at least will not be inaugurated on January 20th. Now, despite what you think about the voting irregularities, we have to face the fact of a post-Trump presidency in the GOP. And basically in this video, I wanted to lay out the future of what the GOP should be. Now, not every single thing is something I would 100% agree with, but I think this is the best way where we could stick to our values and give an electorally viable strategy and platform that the GOP can use to become a dominant party. Basically, what types of policies to pursue and the appeals to make and the strategies to undertake and so forth. And there is a looming civil war over the soul of the right-wing party in America. And I wanted in this video to clarify what the GOP should do. First of all, they should focus. The first thing is focus how to win, and also two, be true to the roots of being a true right-wing party. So there are two visions of the future GOP that is going to be involved in this future civil war. One is personified by the Nikki Haley's of the party, the Jeb Bushes of the party, the people who have made the Lincoln Project and the Gen Z GOP, those types of monstrosities. The neocon warmongers, the so-called conservatives who bow and accept every single left-wing issue on social and cultural issues. Those who want to serve the ultra-elites on Wall Street, Hollywood, and Silicon Valley while they throw the remaining scraps to the American worker. The other side is personified by those who are nationalists, populists, who advocate for true social conservatism, advocate for a more balanced policy and economics. They are anti-war, pro-worker, and strongly in favor of the American heritage and our traditions. The first thing we must address about what the future GOP is what is exactly the base of the party. Now, what does that mean? Well, the base of any party is since we're a right-wing party, we live in a democracy, and political parties are there to represent different interests of different people. So we obviously want everyone to vote for us, but the people have different values and interests, so we need to focus on a broad coalition that will carry us to victory. And so we have to put resources in place to focus on these key constituencies that would be naturally inclined to support a right-wing populist nationalist party. So the first, we will focus on race. The core of the GOP should forever be a party that helps advance white interests, white American interests. Now, that does not mean we have to be an explicitly white party, though. We need to be a civic nationalist party. So think of it like this. Think of it as how the Democratic Party isn't really a black party, but is implicit like, hey, we are for the black voter. We're for the black Americans. Same thing with the GOP with white Americans. We need to appeal to the interests of white Americans. We need to call out the anti-white racism of the left. And the thing with this, though, is that white voters aren't as homogeneous as a bloc as black voters are. But as a goal, we should focus on trying to get about 65% of the white vote, the non-Hispanic white vote. So that's the core of it. The core of it should be the traditional Americans who've been here for hundreds of years, the white Americans. However, that's just, there could be, cream on the core. And that should be outreach to Hispanics and Asians. Not by pandering to them, by focusing on we're going to pander to your race, but in the sense that, if we appeal to them with conservative and nationalist issues to their communities through direct outreach, they will be inclined to support us. And over time, it's that through the generations, they'll start seeing themselves as more white, like how Italians and Irish did. Now, the goal should be about getting about 50% of the Hispanic and Asian vote, and which should be doable. We could probably even get more than that. So what we could do is not compromise on our issues. We could directly and craft our nationalist populist message to appeal to Hispanics and Asians. For example, we could appeal to Hispanics about entrepreneurship and law and order, and appeal to Asians about affirmative action. However, so the core of it is the white Americans who've been left behind by all parties, and they need to say, hey, we're explicitly going to fight for you. But that does not mean we're an explicitly white party. Implicitly, maybe, but explicitly, we're for everyone who wants to fight and be for America. Looking beyond race, we need to also become a populist working class party. However, not a socialist one. And the reason why I say this is that Americans like capitalism. They like the idea of becoming rich through hard work. They like the choice of capitalism and competition. Hell, they even might, support some less taxes and regulations on themselves. So we can. So what this can do though is also we could be a party of American business, of true American, not rootless multinationals. We can champion honest, good, hard, common good capitalism, and advocate for American prosperity while also advocating for the working class and advocate for pro-worker policies that raise wages. We need to appeal to the blue-collar workers, appeal to those that were left behind by automation, left behind by globalization, and feel that they are on the bad scale of an increasingly unequal economy. This can appeal to working class people of all races, but especially we need to appeal to the working class in the Rust Belt. And so we could make it be a balance. We could be a pro-worker party, and we could be in favor of like a social democratic, in a way, pro-business party. But there's a good balance to be had. But not socialism, but also not like free market. The other core base of support beyond the working class and beyond race and economics is we need to appeal to the culture. And there is a giant chunk, even if we're not in the majority, the future Republican Party should be appeal to the religious, be a religious and social conservative party. If we're a social liberal party, then we're no different than the Democratic Party, and because that's the core, that should be our base. That base is people who believe in tradition and order and our heritage and such. However, there could be a balance too. However, there is a streak within Republican Party that is a bit libertarianish. So we could be socially conservative and pro-faith and all that. And we can campaign on family values, tradition, but also on freedom. We can be pro-traditional marriage and anti-abortion, while also being pro-gun, pro-privacy, and pro-free speech. And on a last note, we can appeal to, here's some other groups of people that could comprise the base of this new Republican Party. We could appeal to married families, small business owners, those who are in the military, older voters, those in the rural and suburban areas, farmers. We could appeal to the youth. So each of these constituencies can be catered to if given the right message, and they must be appealed to comprise the core of a winning coalition. Now that we know what the base of the new future Republican Party should be, and who we should be appealing to, and what the party should represent, what are the policies we should implement? So that's the next thing we should talk about, because, the whole purpose isn't just to win. Winning is just a means to an end of serving America, its people, and protecting America's heritage. So these policies I'm about to list are kind of broad in a way. I'll go a little bit into detail, but not too much. But these are things that could help us win, are put together to help us win elections, do what, obviously we have values, we have things we want to do, and these are what these policies are supposed to be for. It's to push our vision, our values, and lastly, and these values hopefully will at the end goal, make us easier to win in the future. So what are some ideas that I, laid out? The first thing is immigration restrictions. What this means is legal immigration limits, combating illegal immigration, promoting border security, and promoting greater assimilation. That's kind of like a broad, immigration thing that I put it together. It should be an anti-immigration party, and that's that. Number 2, it should be pro-family and pro-children. It should strengthen and promote marriage, incentivize childbearing, make married families get, the resources they need, and celebrate marriage. And, obviously Republicans say this already, but they don't actually advocate for anything that actually is pro-family. They make some like vague statements and all that, but there needs to be I made a family bill of rights that I made in my previous videos, and that's what should be it should be promoting the family. Third, being a pro-worker and pro-small business. We need to advance worker rights so they could get a fair shot to get ahead. If they work 40 hours, they should be able to achieve their American dream. It should be common sense capitalism, but for pro-small business. We want to make business formation easier, but we also want to rein in corporate power. We want to empower entrepreneurs, and we want to empower the worker. We want to be able people to get rich, but we also want to help the common poor out. So that's the third. 4, we want to have an export-oriented industrial policy. What this means is that basically we have a giant reindustrialization of America. We need to make America self-sufficient. That means investments in infrastructure and in the farms and in industry. We need targeted investments to strengthen the overall American economy. As I mentioned, research, infrastructure, research and development, have industrial parks and have industrial grants. And what this will do is basically create high-tech and high-paying jobs to export American products abroad. So we become self-sufficient, we create good jobs here, and we become stronger by exporting our products abroad. A fifth policy should be about having like a public option for healthcare, which will basically give an option to people who have no insurance or have expensive insurance. They could get a public option. This will negotiate down drug and healthcare costs. However, this would also preserve healthcare choices for people who want to get more expensive healthcare that is more experienced and more like a gold standard in a sense. But this gives a public option should be our policy for healthcare. Sixth is true social conservatism and fighting against anti-war policies. This means being pro-life, pro-marriage, traditional marriage, pro-guns, pro-free speech on the internet, against mass surveillance, against anti-white policies such as affirmative action and critical race theory. This is the balance that can be had between libertarians and social conservatives. The seventh, in foreign policy, we should be anti-war and anti-entangling alliances, like George Washington said. We should end our wars in far-flung countries, be less entangled with international alliances and treaties. We should also, however, have a strong, well-funded military and cut out waste from there, and also completely fund the benefits that our veterans are earned and deserve. 8, it should be anti-corruption, have electoral reform, basically like campaign finance reform, advocate for term limits, restructure to have more proportional representation, etc. 9 should be more environmentally friendly. But we have to support those who in the heartland who work in mining, who work in the coal mines, who work in oil. We need to help them, but we also could be a bit more environmentally friendly. We could advocate market-based solutions to help encourage green energy, export American-made green tech, plant trees, protect our national parks, that sort of thing. In terms of education, we should focus on school choice. We have to basically in public school boards teach conservative nationalist policies. High school should be reorganized in the way I see it, through like a German model where we focus on trade schools and apprenticeships instead of forcing everyone to go to college. And, college should be a bit less expensive, especially for, more like real degrees like STEM and such. And lastly, the last policy that should be catered to is basically I kind of make like a restore American greatness. That means like advocating for big things for America, like putting a man on the moon, on Mars, making a bullet high-speed train, say from DC to Boston, create like a massive housing program to, millions of housing units to help, married families get a house that's very cheap, those types of things. So those are policies and I know this was a long one, but those are kind of more very broad things that we should advocate for that would help us win, appeal to the constituents that we need to appeal to, and fundamentally just push the right-wing populist nationalist message. Now that I briefly went over some broad policies that the future GOP should focus on, I think it is especially prevalent that now we move on to figuring out certain strategies that the GOP should do, because that can make or break if you win or lose. The first of which is the message of how you present your party to the American people. The other is how you portray your opposition. The biggest thing that the GOP is currently good at, for the most part, is tarnishing the left wing, even if it's not always accurate. Specifically, though, what the future GOP should do for the Democrats is they should slander the Democrats as a party of radicals. Joe Biden won because people thought he would be this moderating influence, that he's just some brilliant statesman, moderate old white guy from Delaware, that he would be cool. We need to rip that off. We need to show that this is the party of cultural Marxism and economic socialism. Point out their extremely anti-white and anti-American statements and how their policies would be absolutely horrendous. And this should be easy as Democrats are becoming more and more progressive. But singling out their defense, we should single out how they support abolishing the police, the catastrophe if they pass their Green New Deal, how they're supportive they're supportive for critical race theory, and that ideology is anti-American, and how they want to take away your guns. There's just a lot of ways you could attack the Democratic Party, And if the people think the Democrats are normal, then they might be inclined to vote for him. So even if they don't agree with everything of our message, knowing if the other side is, completely quack would help our side. This is what happened with Michael Dukakis and George McGovern and so forth. However, besides tarnishing the Democrats, the American public needs to be presented with an alternative. The Republicans should instead present themselves as a people's party, a party for the American citizen and for the American nation, that we are the true representatives of the average Joe and Jane, the bastions of stability and order, and so forth. We need to be for the workers and also for the small businesses. Take care for the common welfare of the poor and sick, while also promoting entrepreneurship and the ability of becoming rich and successful. We need to be a patriotic, civic nationalist party that protects white interests while letting others join in onto the conservative message, such as Hispanics and Asians. We need to be pro-family, pro-faith, with a delicate balance being slain between a social conservatism and preserving order, but also standing up for freedom, although not as much as social liberals. We need to be moderate on that issue. So all these things should be the message of the new GOP. It's populist, clear-headed, pragmatic, and bold at the same time. These next few strategies will be how to secure our hold onto the country. The first of which is the media, which is heavily liberally slanted and is very liberally biased. So, we should uphold Fox News, even if they're not the best, and uphold those panels like Tucker Carlson that could spread the message to millions of people. And because the media is the ones who set the narrative, and we could combat the media, then they cannot be the ones who set the narrative. We are the ones who set the narrative. To that end, also, the party should encourage alternatives to the mainstream media. We should, allow the meme makers to do their magic, which means, obviously, preventing big social media companies from deplatforming. We should promote and allow people to break and make stories on YouTube and Twitter and other tiny websites. We should also have nonprofit and other organizations outside the official GOP who could spread the nationalist populist message into civil society. Like Turning Point USA, but less gay. Speaking of the GOP, the GOP should also create a dedicated youth wing that is for 16 to 30 years old, something like that. Like they do in Europe. Now, I understand there's some things that are kind of like that already, but they should be more ingrained and more strong. What this will do is strengthen GOP youth outreach if it's crafted well enough, and we can use the youthful energy to put fresh blood into the ranks of the old dinosaur GOP, and this new youth wing should mobilize the young conservative vote and teach conservative nationalist doctrine to the next generation. Because just because they're young, in the youth, does not mean that have to be liberals. At the very least, we could get 40% of them maybe. But we shouldn't just give up the whole youth vote. So a few other strategies that would help in terms of for this future GOP is being more in tune with the state and local chapters of the party. So the United States is a federal republic. Lots of stuff happens at the state and local level, and just focusing all our issues on the national level is only part of the job. We need to be a party that puts focus on local participation in places like local county seats, state representatives and state senate races, in terms of in this, the state senate, not the senators that get sent to Washington, school boards, mayors, and so forth. People in these positions can actually make very meaningful impact in the communities. They could push our message and our vision for the country. They should be guided, but also given some autonomy to craft the message to the needs of the local community. Through this, we should also have a revamp on how we raise funds. There should be the focus of how we do fundraising should be a grassroots campaign. We can't just be going to rich donor after rich donor after rich donor and that's it. We need to go to door to door. We need to be knocking on doors. We need to, sort of like the Justice Democrats, who basically recruit local people who believe in the message and then run them and just run on the people's money. So we need people who believe in the, and also not only that, we need to push policies that strengthen us politically. And I've already mentioned this throughout this video, but things like ensuring free speech on the internet so that social media companies can't, censor us and we can counter big media narratives. We should pursue school choice to break the education establishment cabal. We need to ensure our gun rights to protect people from being able to, from rioting anarchists and Black Lives Matter. People could burn down their property and kill them. And we need to encourage an industrial policy to develop jobs right in swing states and loyal states, so they vote for us. So that is a few strategies that I think the GOP should pursue to help us in terms of pushing our message and winning, basically. So the future GOP can run to turn America into the nation that stands as a beacon for all the world to marvel at. An America that is the forefront of culture, the forefront of science, the forefront of military might, and a stable political climate. The GOP can lead the way for a populist nationalist message that can see immigration restricted, protect America's traditions and heritage, promote common good capitalism that focuses on workers and small businesses, leads us away from war, and looks out for the downtrodden. We can do it. With the right message, the right policies, and the right strategies, the GOP can become the party it needs to be to save America. So aim high, wander on, from America, with Russian love.